Artie, you ever watched Unsolved Mysteries?
So, no.
No?
Yes and no. I only started watching it because you and Josh recommended it to me, but before that, no.
Yeah, it's a fantastic show. The narrator or the host of that show, Robert Stack, just has this fantastic voice. I probably could even do it justice trying to emulate it, but it's so serious and so matter of fact. The reason I'm bringing up Unsolved Mysteries is because the story I want to talk about today is pulled directly from that. It's where I first learned about this particular haunting, and I think it would be a lot of fun to kind of just jump into it. Before we do that, hey everybody, this is Mike
Reaper.
You are now listening to Ectoplasmic Residue, and I'm here with my co-host, Artie.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Not too much, but I'm really excited because this story is one of the first stories that I can remember falling in love with as a kid. There was this one particular episode of Unsolved Mysteries that featured this haunting called, I think the episode was called The Tallman Ghost. Tallman referring to the last name of the people that had experienced this.
So it's not a tall ghost?
No, it's not. Actually, it's quite the opposite, and we'll get into that later. But you actually went and took the time to watch this episode. Is that correct?
Yeah. You recommended me this episode. That was the first time I watched it.
What did you think? What did you think of the episode, like in general? What did you think of the show in general?
The show is amazing. I think I like the style of the show. It's very beyond belief. If anything, Beyond Belief probably took from that show.
I don't know. When did Beyond Belief come out? Beyond Belief? You mean like Fact or Fiction?
Fact or Fiction, yeah.
The guy from Star Trek?
Yeah, and he's asking a ton of questions. But the episode alone was a good episode, yes. But I found it pretty funny.
Why?
The events that occurred in this episode happened because the parents in this episode decided to buy a bunk bed, which was apparently a haunted object. A bunk bed.
A haunted bunk bed? You know, it's so funny because like the whole concept of haunted objects, I feel, is not something that hasn't existed before, but it's become really popular, especially since you've had like the Conjuring movies come out and everybody is now aware of like the Annabelle doll. And, you know, the Annabelle doll has always been a really famous haunted object, but I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of rare. Usually it's like when you talk about a ghost story, it's a haunting of a house, it's a haunting of a person, but you don't oftentimes blame an object for a haunting. But this particular story has this haunted bunk bed. At least that's how Unsolved Mysteries portrays it, which is kind of bizarre. We'll get into why that's weird, but
I don't
just
think
feel
we
like
need to get into why that's weird. It's a haunted bunk bed, Michael.
I mean, I know, like out of all the things you could haunt as a demon, why would you go for a bunk bed? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, at least like the Annabelle doll is kind of creepy, or like, I don't know, a ceremonial knife that's haunted, or some weird thing that's used in like a ritual. Like what were they, like whoever owned this bunk bed beforehand, what were they doing with it? Like why was it the bunk bed that this thing decided to attach itself to? I have so many questions.
I want to talk about what I think, but I think we should talk about this after you tell the story. Because the story alone, nonetheless, is actually good. I just find it funny that it's just a bunk bed. But the story alone is really creepy, and it fucked up this family.
I guess we can get into it. So the Unsolved Mystery episode literally starts off with the buying of this bunk bed. So this bunk bed is purchased, and once that bunk bed is purchased, weird activity starts happening in this home. So the story takes place between the years of 1986 through like 88 in the city called Horicon, Wisconsin. This young family, with Alan and Deborah being the parents, had moved into this place. I want to say around, I don't know, November of 86, maybe a little like after. The family starts experiencing a lot of weird stuff, specifically once they buy the bunk bed. It starts out with your typical stuff. So the family starts realizing they're getting sick all the time, and they can't seem to stay healthy. The kids, primarily, they're just constantly sick. And then you have the father, who's Alan. He is experiencing something a little different, where he's just constantly irritated. Now, to me, it just sounds like it's a young family with a bunch of young kids. He's just frustrated all the time, and he's like, him and his wife are like getting into fights about nothing, which sounds like just a regular relationship to me. But they found it a little weird. And so as things are developing, the mother, which is kind of weird in this situation, isn't really experiencing anything out of the ordinary outside of having to deal with constantly sick kids and an overly irritated husband. When they had first moved in, they had 2 kids, and then there was a third one that was going to be on their way. And once the third one was born, it seemed like activity started to pick up. Now, the one thing that the wife did experience is she had a particularly kind of rough pregnancy. I think she was suffering from placenta previa, which is a type of issue where the placenta isn't sitting right, I think, or something like that, or like it's like kind of detaching a little bit. No, that's placenta abruptio. Not important. But she was having a complicated pregnancy, and that's what matters. And so So once the kid's born, it's a daughter. So they have a son and two daughters. The son being the oldest. I think he was around 7, 8 years old, something like that. And then his younger sister was about 2.5, and then there was the newborn. So once the newborn got a little older, they ended up moving the newborn into the oldest son's room that he was in before. So they moved the son out of his room because it was bigger, and they moved the two daughters into a new room, which they were going to then share, which is where that bunk bed comes into play. And so they bought this bunk bed, and it's from like that point forward that things just started to ramp up. Primarily, the young son, Kenny, would just have a terrible time sleeping. He would constantly complain about bad dreams and things waking up in the middle of the night. He would hear knocking, things like that, like your typical poltergeist stuff.
I know that the night that the family moved the beds upstairs, their son Danny, he was in the room next to it. After the parents said goodnight, he noticed that the clock radio was apparently turning on its own. Like he can see the knobs on the clock radio turning. Mm-hmm. And he goes and he tells his parents, hey, I saw this radio knob moving on itself. Parents just looked at each other and was like, well, you know what? If you're gonna behave like this, they basically just kind of like
yeah, they just took the radio away from him. They're like, you don't get to have this anymore. And the kid's probably just like, yeah, great, it's haunted.
He's just traumatized,
like,
dude.
I'm trying to sleep here, and it keeps putting it onto like AM radio, and you know how I feel about that. Yeah, it's little things like that. There was another incident. No, it's funny because you called him Danny, and that's right. In the Unsolved Mysteries episode, his name is Danny. But I actually also looked into another version of this story. It was written down in this book called Haunted America, and in the book his name is Kenny. Now I'm not sure what his actual name is because I think both Unsolved Mysteries and Haunted America made the efforts to not blow up the children's names. For that fact, I don't even know if the actual Tallmans themselves, if their names are actually Alan and Deborah, because it's a good thing they didn't want to blow their spot up too much and have to expose them, because like even in Unsolved Mysteries they're telling their story in the shadows, you know what I mean? Like they're like witness protection or something like that.
Like their faces just you just see the outline of their hair.
Yeah, it seemed like Kenny or Danny was really kind of getting the worst of it. Just terrible restless sleeps. They also had gotten themselves a little kitty cat that in the book is called Cat, is what they named it. This cat, once again, as I was reading the story, it just seemed like a regular cat. But what they were saying is the cat was hyper. It was running around all the time. It was climbing up walls. It would run around in the middle of the night, just going absolutely insane, to the point where they actually had to get rid of it because it was just causing too much problems. But everything that they described that the cat was doing sounded just like a regular cat.
Right. And I'm gonna actually stop you right there. What happened? They didn't let the cat go.
Right.
The cat was acting up because he was uncomfortable. What happened was he was like the cat was going crazy. They put him in the bathroom. Right. Mm-hmm. He was still kind of going nuts. They opened the door to let the cat out, and it jumped onto the drywall, mm-hmm. and it held on to the drywall like it was scared. Shortly after that, the cat just ran away and never came back. He's like, I'm out. Mm-hmm. Fuck this place.
Here's the thing about the cat, though, right? And there's a couple of other things. Like, the kids started getting sick, like specifically Danny and his younger sister, and the father, Alan, was becoming irritated well before they bought these bunk beds. And the cat incident actually happened before they bought these bunk beds. I mean, this is kind of like a small period of time. Like they moved in the spring of '86, and by the time they bought the bunk beds, it was, let's see, mid '87, right, when they bought these bunk beds. There was a lot of time that passed before the purchasing of the supposedly haunted bunk beds and their initial move-in, and a lot of other incidences happened in between them, specifically one with a babysitter. Now, this is where you start to get like some of the phenomenon isn't just really centered around feelings and sicknesses and cats acting up and a young kid afraid of the dark. Now you have this babysitter who also experienced something. So while the parents had gone out to just get some dinner, they had left Danny there and his sister with the babysitter who they had worked with before. And while Danny and the babysitter were playing a game, one of the chairs started rocking back and forth and like kind of slid across the floor a little bit. And it was kind of an intense situation. The babysitter was pretty upset. Danny was pretty upset. So when his parents came home, the babysitter was like, hey, this is what happened. They didn't really know how to take it because it's like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do with this? Like, how do we respond to something like this? So she got the hell out of there. And the parents were just kind of confused, but they didn't necessarily, it's not that they didn't believe her. They believed her, but it was just like, like what she was saying was too hard to believe. So they were kind of in that weird state. So anyway, the family had experienced some probably typical growing pains, I would think. You got a young family, they're moving in a new place, they're in a new city, so there's going to be some irritation with the parents, the kids are going to be uncomfortable, and then they buy that bunk bed once the third one is old enough to move into a room with her sister. That's when the phenomenon starts to pick up a little bit. What do you remember now from the Unsolved Mysteries episode, Artie?
It's funny that the parents are trying so hard to not believe. They're just so like, nope, this isn't real. Absolutely not. I know that from when I was listening to the Unsolved Mysteries episode, they mentioned that Alan was painting the walls in his basement, and then he went upstairs for lunch. He comes back, and the paintbrush that he had was on the table, bristle side up, and that's not how he left it. And he's still so ignorant about that whole thing.
Well, okay, and that's kind of how the episode portrays it. But in the actual story, the actual like written story that I had found in that book, he goes up because I think he needs to. It's not about lunch. He needs to go and he needs to like try to put his kids to sleep because his kids have such a hard time sleeping. They refuse to sleep. And that's like one of like the running themes throughout the story is like they cannot sleep. They're constantly being woken up. And it seems like when one of them is awake, the others are dead asleep. So it seems like it rotates through the children in keeping them up.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And so he had this habit of going and sleeping in his daughter's room specifically just so that they would fall asleep. And so he got up, he did that. When he came back down to start painting again, the paintbrush, which he had left on, I don't know what you want to call it.
It was a bucket.
It wasn't a bucket. It was like that little square thing that you put paint into, like that you would put a roller in. A tray, like a paint tray, I guess. He left it on that, and then he came back to find it upside down in the actual paint can. And so when he found that, he actually went right back to painting. He cleaned it off, did the best he could, and got back to it. And while he was down in the basement, he saw a shadow figure. They don't call it a shadow figure in the book, because I think this book came out before shadow figures were even like a thing. But he saw a shadow figure. He was a little disturbed by it. He wrote it off as a car passing by. Like the headlights were coming through the little window slits and it caused like a shadow to move through the basement. That's how he justified it. But you could tell in the way he was describing it, that's not what happened. But he didn't have any other way to explain what he saw. And I think that's
Did he explain how the shadow was? Was it like a person shadow or just a shadow?
Just a shadow is how it was described. There was a shadow that moved out of the side of his eye, and it caught him off guard. He looked at it, and when he like looked for it, it wasn't there anymore. And that's totally omitted from the Unsolved Mysteries episode. Now, the thing is that like although there was like these weird things happening, there was another incident that happened downstairs in the basement as well. So they were hearing knocks, and there was like all these little weird things that were happening in the house that are typical of a haunting. But they were under the impression that somebody was breaking into their house and messing with them. Specifically, the paintbrush incident kind of made them feel that way. But there was another incident that's not mentioned in Unsolved Mysteries at all, where a window was pulled out from the basement. So it was like almost looked like somebody had popped out a window and set it down on the floor in order to get in and out of the basement. The problem is that if they were breaking in, that's fine. You could pop the window out, slip into the basement, drop down, you're good to go. But if you wanted to get out of the basement, you would have had to use a ladder or push something up against the wall in order to be able to climb back out. And the thing was that when they found that window popped out, there was no way anybody could have gotten back out. So they were either still in the house or they had like left through the front door, but there's no way that could have happened because the time frame from when they knew the window was there to when they found the window popped out and placed on the floor, there is no way anybody could have gotten in and out. But they were certain that there was somebody breaking into their house and messing with them. And so for a long time, like as all these events took place, they were really under the impression that somebody was out to get them. They were malevolently like messing with them, but a person, not a thing.
That person must have been the best ninja that ever ninja'd, if that was the case.
Yeah.
If they never caught this person. That's crazy.
I don't know. I think that would be a pretty mediocre ninja. I mean, that's not that impressive.
The fact that if this was a person and they never got caught and he's been fucking around with their kids in the bedroom and them as well.
It's like this ninja is coming into my house. He's making my kids sick and he's making me irritated at my wife because she didn't clean the dishes right enough.
Hey, I'm going to give you a sickness. No, please don't.
I told you need to put the glasses upside down so dust doesn't get into them, Deborah.
He's just causing family feud. So we're talking about the bunk bed. We're talking about his experience happening to the father and what he's seeing and stuff like that. But the bunk bed, now the children had to sleep in this thing. This is like the main source of the haunting, the bunk bed. The kids are there laying in this thing and probably scared out of their mind.
Well, okay, so you have the two girls, right? So they're the two younger ones. Now, I think the older of the two was like 2.5, and then the younger one was like just born when this first starts out, and then like 6 months to, I guess, a year when it finally ends. And so the oldest one, the older daughter, was having experiences as well, but not how you would think. So they don't really touch on it in Unsolved Mysteries, but and this is such a classic like haunting thing, but they would find the older daughter, that's Marianne. She was constantly being caught talking to somebody in the middle of the night. Like I said, they wouldn't sleep, but Marianne would constantly have these pleasant conversations with something, and then the mother would come in and like try to get her to go to sleep, and she just, I don't know, she was just constantly being awoken and talking to something. They likened to it that she was having a tea party with somebody all the time. And like, it just reminds me of like
when you were little and you had tea parties.
Every young little creepy girl that's in a haunted area is constantly just making friends with the demon. Like, what is that? Like, why are they always friends with the little girls? I don't know.
Hey, that's how they get to you. That's how demons take possession of you. You welcome them in, and they know kids are they're sweet, they're innocent. Well, most of them, and it's a very easy way in. And from there,
yeah, it is. But it's funny because like on one hand you have like the little boy and the demon's over there just messing with his radio, and then you have the little girl and he's just like having a tea party with her. And it's just so weird how whatever it is, we don't even know if it's a demon or not, right? It's just these things that are happening.
Yeah, and you're talking about the oldest daughter, and from the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, again, now I haven't been able to read Haunted America. I didn't buy the book. So from what I'm saying, it's Unsolved Mysteries, and Michael has the other version of it. So if I mess up, I apologize. Apparently, the youngest daughter would wake up and see this thing behind the door, and apparently it had red eyes. And the way she described it as a witch. A red-eyed witch. Now, I don't know if she actually described it as a witch because she's also a little girl. I don't know if she knows what a witch is yet. But she sees that behind the door, red eyes. And at some point, she also saw fire in the room, which is something that happened. Something similar happened to the father down the line, but this is what the little girl, the youngest girl, is seeing. So the older girl's making friends. The younger girl is just being tormented.
Yeah, so the red eyes actually comes up a couple of times in the book. I know at some point after the window incident and the paintbrush incident, they decided to get a dog because they were like, oh, we need something here to kind of help secure the house a little bit more. But that poor dog was just constantly barking at the house. Like, that's all the dog did for like the first few weeks they bought it, is it would just stand outside and just bark at the house, not at passerbys, not at the neighbors. It would just plant itself in the yard and bark at the house directly, and they would bring it inside. And especially at night when they would bring it in, it was just super antsy, or was running around all over the place, barking at random areas. It was not a happy dog. The good thing is unlike the cat, they kept the dog, but that poor dog was not having a great time there. And so it's just barking, right? And it's just that's what dogs do. That's what dogs do. They bark at things they don't like. And this dog was just barking all over the place.
Yes, but also dogs, when they're following something and barking, but they're following something with their eyes, that's unsettling.
How often?
And that's happened to me
is
several times.
When?
With my two Cocker Spaniels, Freddie the first and the second.
You got another one?
I've had 3 bloodlines of Cocker Spaniels named Freddie, 1, 2, and 3, from the same family. When we used to live in a mobile home park, Freddie would stand in the hallway and just growl, attack growl at nothing. And it was always when I was alone, never when anybody was around, ever. The living room was connected to the kitchen, and it was, it's a mobile home park. Everything was kind of connected in a way. So the hallway connected to the kitchen, that connected to the living room, and I was sitting in the living room. Mm-hmm. He would start backpedaling from the hallway, a fucking weirdo, and start growling. And at some point, and then sometimes he would whimper. And that was always very unsettling. That's not normal. For dogs don't do that on a normal. That's not their normal behavior. Yeah. And then the other dog did the same thing. So yeah, it's quite unsettling.
Are you sure it's just not like built into their bloodline to just bark at nothing?
Bark and growl at nothing? No.
Yeah, maybe they're just inbred and they don't realize it.
They're not inbred.
They're all named Fred. Suspicious. Okay, but yeah, that poor dog, the Tallman's dog, was not having a great time. Moving forward in the story, like I'll touch on the red eyes thing because, like you mentioned, like the little girl was seeing that thing with the red eyes. Well, I think it was like in October of '87, the father got got a promotion at work, which caused him to have to work like the night shift. That's a great thing for him. But unfortunately, during that same time, he got horrifically sick. So sick that he had to take that his wife had to take him to the hospital. And so while he was at the hospital, they had asked his mother to come and watch the kids. So she had come down, was staying with the kids while they were at the hospital. But while she was there, something really bad happened to her, and they didn't find out initially. So when they came home from the hospital, they were met with their mother waiting at the front door, keys in hand, and she was like, "Glad you guys are back. I'm getting out of here." And then she took off. Immediately they were like, "Wait, you're just going to take off? Like, you don't want to like hear what happened with like your son?" Like, this is the wife speaking to Alan's mother. "You don't want to hear what happened?" And she's like, "Nope, gotta go." So she just bolted out of there. And it wasn't for a couple of days that they would actually learn why she had left. So it turns out that when the family had first moved into this house, this is before the bunk bed, before anything, like they would have family over all the time. The brothers, sisters, the parents. But over time, the family stopped visiting, and they would only come down there on rare occasions, usually if they had to, like in this incident where Alan got real sick. So the family had described it that even though it was a nice new house and there was nothing visually wrong with it, every time they were in there, they would feel like they were being suffocated, or they would feel like something was coming down onto them. They just had this instant fear while they were there, this oppressiveness. And so the family refused to come down there outside of have-tos, like in this incident. And so what they had learned is that while the mother was there in the house, she was sleeping on the couch, laying down on the couch, I guess you could say, when she looked out the window, the front window, and she saw two red eyes. And she described it as red pupils, right, with like a green iris. Like the rest of the eye was green, but the pupils were red.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah. They were looking at her through the window. They tried to justify it, like Alan and Deborah tried to justify it as maybe it was like rear car lights that were like kind of shining through the window that gave the effect of eyes. But once again, they seem to try to justify everything that they were seeing.
These parents piss me off. They're trying to justify everything.
Well, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Nothing
all the time.
Nothing
it's annoying.
has.
I don't get it. At this point, like, how is it hard to believe though? They have so many encounters. There's their kids telling their babysitter. I don't get it.
Well, I get it, but it's like Alan and Deborah themselves haven't really experienced anything that is substantial. Like they haven't had that experience yet. But the kids are obviously seeing stuff.
Yeah.
The family members.
Yeah. Okay. But this guy's painting his basement. He goes upstairs to get lunch, comes downstairs, and then he sees his brush is in a completely different position.
Would you automatically think that because your paintbrush was in the paint can that it was a ghost?
Well, no, it wasn't only that. It was bristle side up in the bucket. That is not how he left it. Like, come on, dude. This guy an idiot?
I guess.
This guy pisses me off.
I guess. I get it. I get where they're coming. I mean, I would probably justify...
Look, honestly, dude, this family is stupid.
Wow. That is unnecessary. That is mean, Artie.
It's not mean. They're dumb.
Even the kids? Because the kids are, like, speaking right up about it. Okay. They're like, look.
All right. So maybe not the kids, but the parents? The parents are dumb. Okay. They piss me off.
Why would you haunt a bunk bed? I just don't understand. Like, if you were a demon or a ghost and you had, like a wide variety of objects to inhabit or to haunt or to possess or to attach yourself to, why would you choose bunk beds?
Well, you know, there's just a lot of haunted objects out there, you know?
That's the thing that's bothering me so much about this. And to be fair, the book really doesn't mention anything about haunted bunk beds. It's only Unsolved Mysteries. And I feel like Unsolved Mysteries needed a way to explain what was happening, right? And so there was activity being experienced before the bunk bed. And it's to me, it's like out of all the things, like, all right, like, because I'm thinking about it now, right? You know how in the Conjuring films, you have Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are actual very famous paranormal investigators who have existed, that have a huge case file. I'm sure we'll talk about them at some point on this show. But they have their haunted museum. And in that haunted museum, they have all kinds of little trinkets and knickknacks that were used in different rituals, and they supposedly have different types of spirits attached to them. And imagine if they had to investigate the Tallman's ghost case, and then they had to find a way to move that huge bunk bed into their little, like... I don't know. It's just like I can't see them doing that. but it would be kind of funny to see it happen.
But with like these haunted objects, there's always the story to them. Something happened, something evil. What if in this case the bunk bed came from this tree where, I don't know, they killed a person or a demon or something, you know what I mean? And it attached itself to that tree, and maybe that tree got cut down and processed into a bunk bed, apparently. And that's why these things are happening. That's why these kids are being haunted.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I guess so, but like even then, like if you're the ghost or the demon and you're just gonna follow like a bunk bed around, I mean, I guess it's convenient in the sense that you have a place to sleep and like you have two different options. Like, maybe I want to sleep a little higher tonight rather than sleep a little lower.
It's not that it's following the bunk bed. It's more like that. The material that the bunk bed is made of, came from a tree, and maybe the thing got attached to the tree, whatever evil thing, maybe a witch or something, and then
I guess so. I just you just threw out like somebody was hung on a tree, and then that tree's wood was made into a bunk bed. I just
it could happen,
Sure. The way I see it is that maybe perhaps you had some like 13, 14-year-old Satanist, right, in his parents' basement. He had a bunk bed because that was his bed, and he summoned a demon on it. He summoned a demon on his bunk bed because that's what he had to work with, and that demon popped into existence after he got summoned, and he was just like, really a bunk bed is what you like attached me to? Because don't you have to like use the item in a ritual or something like that if it's gonna be a demon, or if it's gonna be something like malevolent like that? Like you have to be like, hey demon, this is for you, here's your vessel, please work your magic.
In this case, and this is all hypothetical, but the bunk bed probably came from some sort of tree where something bad happened.
Dude, what tree are you talking about? Like you just use that as an example. Why does it have to be a witch?
Well, it's a tree, dude. Where does wood come from, dude?
A tree.
Okay. And what do you think that bunk bed is made out of?
Bunk bed?
Okay.
Bunk bed is made of bunk bed, Artie. You don't know. What if it wasn't a wood bunk bed? I've seen aluminum bunk beds. Where's your witch tree now, Artie?
You went from something plausible to something ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Funny is I feel like Robert Stack, the host of Unsolved Mysteries, was also like just as bothered by this bunk bed, like haunted bunk bed, as I am. Because every time he says the word bunk bed in that episode, I feel like he's saying the word like he's heard the term bunk bed for the first time. And he's super confused by it. Like the way he stresses the word, it's like, the Tallman family being haunted by this bunk bed. It's like, how do you, like, why would you, like, why does he keep saying it like that? He is so confused. He's like, what's this? 88, right? This is when this episode came out. The show started in 87. Right, so this is what, still season 1, maybe season 2, and he's like, I can't believe we're already scraping the bottom of the barrel, and we're talking about haunted bunk beds. You're definitely going to have to find a clip, though, of him saying bunk bed. And I'm going to need you to put that throughout the episode as often as possible, because I absolutely love the way he says bunk bed. The Tallman's bunk bed. I'm Robert Stack.
They did an investigation, right? Did they?
You mean Unsolved Mysteries did an investigation?
In general, was there an investigation done?
No, not really. It was really just like they had an experience. The experience culminated in them getting the hell out of there, and then the media got involved kind of afterwards. And so that's how this particular story became what it is today, and why it's known, why it made it onto an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. I do know that there was like 3 psychics or something like that brought into it. This is based off the book Haunted America. This is what they said. And then the psychics, like there wasn't a lot of information about the psychics and what they said, but the psychics were like, yeah, this place is haunted. They did have their priest come in as well. And this guy's actually in the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, and he was just like, it's demons. As soon as I walked in, like I know it's demonic in nature.
It's demons.
I don't know what it's demons.
Sorry, guys.
Where were we at, though, in the timeline? What was the last thing that happened? We need to get back to the story. So we talked about the mother, right? She saw the red eyes.
Yeah, she saw the red eyes.
Yeah, so she saw those red eyes. She got the hell out of there. And then what I do know is that there was a point the priest had told the family, hey, I know you guys are experiencing all this weird stuff. Why don't you guys go ahead and take these cassette tapes with religious hymns on them and play them and see if that will help out. He also blessed the house, to be fair. And I think that the activity kind of went away for a little while, for like maybe a week or two.
Oh, just the typical Exorcist Almost Day Omnis Spiritus Mundis.
Did you memorize that whole thing, Artie?
Of course I did. What is wrong with you? Did you not memorize it?
Can I hear it?
I mean, yeah, but you better be impressed. Just for you, dude. Exorcisamus te, omnis immunis spiritus, omnis satanica potestas, omnis incurtio infernalis adversari, omnis congregatio et diabolica, ecclusiam tuum securi divi faciales libertate servir. Te rogamos, albinos.
Okay, well, I'm disappointed now. All right, moving on. After the priest did his little blessing and they were playing those tapes in the house, things were going pretty smooth for them. But it didn't last for very long. Poor Kenny, or Danny, however we want to call him, he ends up seeing essentially what the little girl was seeing. So he was seeing an old woman, and the way he described her was that she was about 3 feet tall and very ugly. But the weird thing about her was that she glowed like fire. Like it was like she was on fire, but not. And she had that light emanating from her. And apparently light phenomenon was a common thing too, like throughout the story. They would see like weird little like flames here and there. And there was just always these images of light that they were kind of running into. But yeah, he said he would see this little old woman, tiny 3-foot woman, just sitting there staring at him menacingly. And he would like get up and he would leave the room and he'd be like, "Hey mom, there's an old lady looking at me." And she's like, "Go back to bed." And so then he would go back to bed, and then the old lady would come back and stare at him. As they described it, she would stare at him harder.
What does it even mean?
I don't know. Maybe your eyes get a little more squinty. I don't know. But the staring would be really intense, and she would just sit there and stare at him all night. And this is like one of the reasons he couldn't sleep. This little, short, ugly lady would constantly just stare at him while he tried to sleep. And then the parents try to like justify it. They're like, "No, it's not anything bad."
Again, dude. People are pissing me off.
The mom said, "It's an angel. It's your guardian angel, and she's like watching over you." And the kid, like he responded to the mother like in a pretty funny way, and he was like, "Mom, an angel wouldn't be that ugly."
Little does he know.
And so yeah, he would just like be terrorized by this little short ugly lady just staring at him while he tried to sleep. You know, it's funny because my cousin had told me a story that when he was, I don't remember how old he was supposed to be, but I want to say he was in his teens, early 20s, and he would wake up to this short, as he described it, evil-looking penguin that would just stare at him, like menacingly, in the same way that this kid described this. And I thought that was really interesting because my cousin had told me a very similar story. But instead of an old woman, it was like an ugly penguin. And it wasn't necessarily a penguin. It's just that was the best way he could describe how it looked. And it had like this ugly face, and its mouth was like crunched up, like withered into this like awful like grimace, and it would just stare at him. I think he said it would like on a low level kind of growl at him too, just like
that's pretty specific.
Yeah, and he would like wake up to it, and it would just sit there. It didn't do anything to him. It just like stared at him hard, as this book described the way the old lady looked at him. I don't know, but that's kind of creepy. Just a little old. I mean,
that is creepy.
What would you do in that situation? This poor kid is getting so traumatized by everything he sees, and his parents are just like, "It's an angel."
His parents are pissing me off. This whole time, his parents have been pissing me off. They have gone through fucking hell and back, denying everything left to right, from babysitters to their kids to family members to themselves, and they're still, I don't know. I guess it's just an angel. It's like, okay, dude.
Yeah. So, oh man, that poor kid. So, like that starts happening, right? Like I think it's at this point. I'm not sure like when in the story. Alan is starting to believe because he's experiencing stuff now, and like he's getting fed up with it. So like any father would do, whose family's being terrorized by something. All of a sudden, right?
He was possessed? Did it have to go that far? That this family or parents really piss me off.
I mean, I don't think it was that extreme. Maybe it was the little old woman story, because that would mess me up. Like if I tried to come home and I was like terrified of just seeing like this like pelvis high old woman running around my house, like that's horrifying. Horrifying. Can you just imagine her? Like she's just like funny. She's just like peeking around the corner. Like you're on the computer, right? You're trying to do your thing, and like out of the corner of your eye, you kind of just see like half a face appear, from like out of the corner of the door, right? And then like as soon as you look over, it just like runs back in, and you just hear like some old lady laugh. I don't know, but yeah,
that would be unsettling. I think the laughing alone would be unsettling. It's almost kind of like what happened to you. Without the laughing, without the old lady.
Oh, with the flesh face thing? Yeah, but that was like one thing. It wasn't even like a ghost thing. It was just a weird thing that I saw. But like if you knew there was like an old lady, right? Just running around, leaving hard candy wrappers everywhere. I don't know.
She a trickster? What is she?
Just Werther's original. Can't keep a bag. I don't know. That's bad. So I think it was like around this time, like the father Alan was just like, he had enough, and so he challenged the ghost, right, or whatever it is, the demon, to be like, hey, you need to leave my family alone, please. Which I think is funny. He asked nicely. And
from what I heard, he went full Zach Baggins.
Right. Instead, you attack me instead. And so it seemed like whatever it was took him up on that and started horrifically fucking with him. Just in the worst way. He was having like nightmares where like his family was constantly being killed in different ways. Just like they're dying in a fire, they're coming home and they were murdered, or they're just all dead. And yeah, he was not having a great time with that. Yeah. And then there's a new point, a new moment, I think, where he comes home from work this one night, and as he's walking up to the front door, he hears the wind kind of pick up. It was a very quiet night, but then all of a sudden he hears like this. And within that wind sound, he hears somebody call him, "Hey, come here, come here." And so he starts going from the front door like towards the garage, and he's going around the garage to try and find out who is calling him. And he's thinking it's this person that they were trying to blame it on, this ninja that, as you described him, messing with him. So he's out there for like 5-10 minutes just trying to find the source of this voice that was calling him. Doesn't find it. So he ends up going back around to the front of his house, and as he's going into the front door, he looks back out at his garage, and his whole garage is like engulfed in flames. And it's during this time that while he's looking at his garage, in the windows that are on the garage door, he sees, once again, 2 red eyes with like green surrounding them, like green veiny eyeballs. And so he sees that, freaks out, obviously, goes into his house, runs, locks the door, and he's just like sitting there not knowing what to do, not knowing how to react to this. And then he remembers, oh, my garage is on fire. So he runs back outside to like see what he can do to manage it, and his garage is just fine. It's just like it had always been. It was never on fire.
Now, do you think he was maybe stressed out at work, and maybe he came home and he was high or something?
I mean, anything's possible, Artie. I don't know. Is that what you think happened?
No.
Okay.
All right. I'm sure somebody's gonna ask that at some point.
Well, I mean, who knows? It's funny because like that particular scene is like the most burned into my memory of the Unsolved Mysteries episode, because I watched that episode when I was like real little, and I watched it whenever it would pop up on reruns, and it was my favorite episode of Unsolved Mysteries. And so like I remember as a kid like how horrifying it was to see this guy come home and his garage is on fire. And I remember like seeing it, like it's all up in flames, and all of a sudden like he comes back and all of it's fine, it's done, it's like it's not on fire anymore. And I remember thinking it was so cool. And then when I watched the episode recently and I saw the effect that they used to make the house look like it was on fire, it was really sad. It was disappointing. I know, but I remember it so vividly, and like the way I remember it was so awesome. And then when I saw it, it was just like wow, and I was like, oh, okay. It was so sad to see like how like lame it looked. It's still a great episode, and I still love it, but just that particular scene was so no pun intended, burned into my memory, and to see it, the flames just look so sad. That's okay. So
in the end, what, they just destroyed the bunk bed, or what happened? Did they burn it or what?
No. So anyway, let me continue the story. So anyway, the father, after realizing the garage is not on fire, he goes back into the house, right? Obviously having a hell of a day. He has his lunch pail in his hands, and he initially put it down. He goes to pick it back up again. In the Unsolved Mysteries episode, it gets flung out of his hands. Like something pulls it, right? in the actual, or in the story that I read, it was really more, it felt like something came up from behind him and rammed him. That's how it was described in the book. I don't know. But something came up from behind him, pushed him really hard. And in addition to it being pushing him, it like flung the lunchbox across the room, scattering its contents. Right? So obviously at this point, Alan is pretty freaked out. And what I think is great is that even though he literally just saw demonic eyes coming out of his garage, which was engulfed in flames after being beckoned to that area by some unseen voice, and then walking into his house and getting butt rammed by a demon, and his lunch flew everywhere, right? His first instinct is to run over to his lunch and pick it up and put it back in his lunch bag. And then he just goes straight to his room and lays down on his bed. And his wife is very confused because she's like, what's going on? She heard the crash of the lunchbox. And so he just lays down in bed and just stares up at the ceiling, not knowing what to do, which I think is a pretty reasonable like response to like what's going on with you. But the fact that he took the time to pick up his lunch, I thought was it's like, just leave it, bro. It'd be so it's terrifying.
So in the end, what, they just destroyed the bunk bed, or what happened? Did they burn it or what?
Oh, so like it was like they were hallucinating, like carbon monoxide poisoning, because that's a common thing that people think they're haunted, and it turns out to just be carbon monoxide poisoning, which is like even scarier than a ghost. Oh, like people would like, I mean, who was it? Was there like a Reddit thread where somebody was like, "Hey, I think my house is haunted," and he's like, "I keep finding these notes written everywhere, and I didn't write this note," and blah 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 blah. And so he was like describing what was happening, and it was kind of creepy. Like it was as if somebody was in his apartment living alongside him, but he never ran into them, because like things wouldn't be where he left them, and just like you would see in a normal haunting. And somebody was like, "Hey, do you guys have a carbon monoxide like detector? Because you might have carbon monoxide poisoning." And sure enough, that's exactly what it was.
That's something I would have never really thrown into when people think, "Oh, my house is haunted," when it could possibly.
Yeah, because it causes like lapses in memory and stuff. So I guess what'll happen is you'll be doing something that you intend. Yeah, kind of like Memento style. You'll be doing something that you totally intended to do, but then immediately forget about it, like hard forget about it. And so you come back and like everything's changed. You did it yourself, you just don't remember doing
it. Crazy. That's that's kind of funny.
It's a little funny. It's a little. You just turn out. You never expect to be the ghost. It was me all along. What are you, Bruce Willis?
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to remember what happened after he laid on the bed, but his wife was obviously like, "Dude, what happened?" And he just did not want to talk about it. And so something else happened.
He could have at least taken a shower.
Yeah. So anyway, another incident happened too, where I guess the girls were having a really hard time sleeping. I might have some of these jumbled up timeline-wise, but essentially they all kind of happened around the same time. It was a pretty short stay at this house. So the father ends up sleeping on the floor of his daughter's bedroom so that they can get to sleep. And while he's there, this mist starts to like come over him. Now in the TV show, it's just this mist that speaks to him, and it says something along the lines of, "You're dead." But in the book, It says you're dead, but he sees something actually in that mist. There's like this figure, this dark figure, and I'm pretty sure it had the red eyes as well. And so it seems like whatever this is was definitely picking on the kids and the husband. And it seemed like they were all kind of seeing different things, right? But the husband was seeing like this dark figure with red eyes. Now, so that obviously tripped him up, and so they ended up, the husband ended up getting up, like went to the wife. He wouldn't tell her what was going on, so she started freaking out. So she called their pastor again, and he ended up coming down, and he's like, "Yep, it's demons." And so I think they do like a prayer and stuff like that, and things got a little bit better again. So I'm pretty sure like there was like periods where things got better, usually when the clergy came in and did their thing. At some point, Ellen's nephew comes to stay with them. I don't know if it's for a period of time or if he just comes here and there, like for a day or two. But there's just one particular night where he is staying. He's staying the night at the house because Alan's been working those late shifts. So he's been kind of like coming to stay with Deborah because Deborah is too afraid to be in the house alone at night anymore. And so this one particular night, the nephew, I think his name was Jonathan, is doing that same kind of routine that the father would do. And he was sleeping on the floor of his cousin's bedroom so that they can get to sleep. He's older. I think he's like about 16, 17, around there. And so while he's sleeping there, the same thing happens to him that had happened to Ellen, where this mist comes in and this horrific thing is like looking at him, right? And it tells him, now you're part of this too. And it absolutely freaks him out. Okay. But it freaks him out so bad that he's like paralyzed and he's calling for Deborah's help, right? He's like, Deborah, come here. He's calling out to her and she hears him. She's not budging. She's not going in. Instead, she's like, what is it? She's like calling out to him. What do you see? And he's like, Deborah, he's yelling at the top of his lungs. He's freaking out. He can't move. He's like being oppressed by this demonic shadow figure. And he's crying out to her for help. And she just refuses to go into the room to help him. And so instead calls to her son, Danny, right? And she's like, Danny, go see what's happening in there. Go see what's happening in the room.
Wow,
and he's like, he's
parents.
like, what? No. He's like, I could see into it. That's the shit I'm seeing. Like, he's like, I see what's in there. I can see it. That's what I've been seeing. And so finally, like, I guess it lets up. The Jonathan, the nephew, is able to get out. So he comes running out, like freaking out. And the girls are awake at this point. And then Deborah's like, where are the girls? And he's like, they're still in the room. And she's like,
I would have been livid if I was Danny. Oh my, I'm mad right now. I'm so upset.
Funny. She tries to send her poor traumatized son into the demon room to see like what's killing his fucking cousin. Oh man.
What is it? 1988? What that case?
Yes, 87 to 88, essentially. Yeah, I think they moved in like 86.
Kind of parenting there was back in the days. Why people are so fucked up now.
Just like think about poor daddy and his mom's just like.
After denying him, punishing him,
go in there.
Now all of a sudden,
see what's killing your cousin.
God.
No. So anyway, so they end up grabbing the kids, the girls, Jonathan and the girls, and Danny and Deborah. They all make it out of the house. They jump in the car and they just go straight to Ellen's work. And they're just like, we're not going back in there. And that's pretty much it. Like, that's pretty much like the end of the story for them. They never went back to the house after that, but there was like a lot of media coverage after the fact. Not something that they wanted either, but the house became known as like, you know, the haunted house in that area. And there was like all kinds of people, like to the point where the police had to put barricades up around the house because so many people were like driving down the street, trying to get into the house. There was trespassers all the time. And it made it into the papers. I think the Tallmans did do a couple of interviews, or at least one interview with like a local reporter who kind of talked about the story that blew it up a little bit, but there was never really any resolution. They did end up destroying the bunk bed, like according to the Unsolved Mysteries episode, but in the book that I read, like I said, it mentioned Bunkbed like once in that entire story. So I don't know where this whole
was it related?
What?
Like when they mentioned bunk beds, did they just say it like as in, oh, they bought some bunk beds, or did they say these bunk beds are the reason?
No,
these?
They never mentioned anything about the bunk beds. It was like just, they bought bunk beds because they moved the daughters into a new room. That's it.
There's so many things about this story that are creepy, thrilling, and just downright, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. The parents just really pissed me off this entire story.
Yeah, they worked really hard to not believe what was happening. They did. But I think my favorite part of the story is just the absolute horrific imagery of the little short, ugly woman just staring menacingly at you, like while you're trying to sleep. Like, that's so messed up, and it just reminds me of my cousin's evil penguin, which it sounds funny because it's a penguin. I mean, first of all, why are you going to be seeing a penguin in like Southern California in like West Covina? You know what I mean? Like just an evil penguin. You would think at least that would be in, I don't know, Antarctica. Do penguins live outside of Antarctica?
I don't even know, man. But so your cousin saw this penguin because when you're little, you do see a lot of things. But to be very detailed and specific about this, what do you think it actually was? You know what? I'm gonna look into that. I'll get back to you on that. I'm gonna get back to you on what your cousin saw.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that the description of a penguin, as funny as it is a little unsettling because I can imagine, because I think it was more about like the height of it and like the overall shape as opposed to it just being like a bird. You know what I mean? But it's that penguin-y height, it's that penguin-y overall shape, and maybe it was just dark, like in the face, like a penguin kind of is. Maybe its eyes like were dark, like a penguin's are dark. But it's like I remember he described the mouth as like being in like this grimace, like this, like just it looks so angry, like at what it, like it, while it's looking at you, it's just so disappointed in you. Right, so it has this look of just absolute malice on its face, and I think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, you should do some research into the evil demonic penguin. That could be a whole episode. Who knows?
That could be a whole episode, and it's probably be on the topic of demons because I'm pretty sure what he saw was a demon.
To be fair, I think he was doing a lot of drugs at this time.
Wow. Okay. Well, that just completely made everything irrelevant.
But you know, that's the whole thing though, is that usually when people experience that kind of stuff, it's because they are in a situation that is not ideal.
Wait, how old was your cousin?
I want to say in his like late teens, early 20s.
Oh, okay. You know what? I was thinking he was like anywhere between 8 to 10. I'm like, this guy was on drugs? What the fuck?
Oh, Artie.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense.
Sweet summer child.
That makes a lot of sense.
The Unsolved Mysteries episode is hands down one of my favorite old school ghost stories that really got me into this. Like, it really got me into this whole topic. And it's one of many, but there's definitely the one I want to talk about, which is the Smurl haunting. And that's for sure going to be episode 1 of season 1.
Yeah, which I'm excited about. That's really not that far off.
No, it's not. Any other thoughts, Artie? Like, what did you think about when I said, like, hey, I want to cover this particular ghost story? Because we had never talked about this story up until recently.
Everything I said was pretty much in the beginning of this episode, and that's pretty much it. It's a funny story because of the way they make it seem. These hauntings happen because of this.
I just love how much you hated the parents.
I just hate the parents. I don't even want to hear the story again.
It would have been that bad. It's just, I get it. They didn't believe in it. You know, they didn't believe in it.
Okay. I'm not even going to say anything.
Okay, Artie. Well, I think that's our story. Are you ready to wrap this up?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I want to remind you guys that this was pulled from an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Did we ever find out what season it was?
No.
Let's find out what season it is so that they can watch it themselves. Actually, we could probably put a link to it.
I'll link it in
the description. Yeah. And then we also want a shout out to Haunted America, which is the book that I actually found this story in.
Which we can also link and buy if you guys want to read.
Yes, we will link that in this. Who wrote it though? Why can't I find?
Was it like Michael and Bertha Scott?
Yes, those were my sources. Haunted America by Michael Norman and Beth Scott, and the Unsolved Mystery episodes, The Tallman Ghost. So thank you everybody for listening. This has been Ectoplasmic Residue. I'm your host, Michael
Reaper.
And this is my co-host, Artie.
Hey, thanks again for stopping by. If you guys do enjoy the content, please show us some love. We'd really appreciate it. Let us know in the comments what you think.
I wouldn't.
And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Bye.